Welcome to the Grid Mod Pod, brought to you by AEIC. In this podcast, you'll hear from the utility industry's top operations leaders on how their companies are working to modernize and improve our ever-evolving power grid. Thanks for joining us.
So I'm really excited about this podcast. I'm so happy that you're able to join me. I know that you and I connected at an AEIC meeting where I believe, the power of AEIC is the networks and the relationship building. So I look forward to kind of discussing all things cable engineering with a lot of other great stuff. So Najwa, thank you for coming. Let's take a moment to introduce yourself to the audience before we get started talking about all the fun things we want to talk about today.
Thank you so much, Liz. Yeah, I remember that day real clearly when we met, and we've been able to collaborate on so much, and just a great a contact in the industry and a great friendship as well. So thank you for having me. A little bit about me. I work for ComEd, and I just actually started a new role as an operation planning manager. Prior to that, I was the manager of distribution standards. And yeah, I've been part of AEIC for quite some time. I think 2013, 2014 is when I joined. And really during my time at part of AEIC, I was really involved in the cable engineering committee. So started off working as, in the different task groups on the distribution side. That was primarily my focus, being part of, guides, specification, working on best practices. And then I got into a leadership role with the cable engineering committee, where I served as chair for 2 years from 2020 to 2021.
Yeah. And so for our listeners, one thing about the Grid Mod Pod, the origins started from something called Distributed Energy Resources, where I got my foot in the door with AEIC. The Grid Mod Pod was really to expand and be able to discuss and share not only some powerful innovation and leadership that exists within the utility space, but also to highlight now, more recently, our committee structure and the active work that's happening with AEIC, but not only if it's happening within AEIC, it's happening and it's a requirement to really keep the lights on for the industry as a whole. And so for any information, you can look at the series of these and or our website to find out which committees we have. But cable engineering was one of the original committees that started in 1885. And so when we think about cable engineering, it doesn't get all the glitz and the glam. It doesn't have any buzzwords to it, but it fundamentally, one could say, is a backbone of a significant portion of our distribution grid, let alone some of our transmission grid. So for our listeners, why don't you share, what are the kind of the technical discussion points? And now this audience, we can say high level. We don't have to get too nerdy. But the discussion elements that the engineering core group would get together and discuss, and really what are the products and some of the things that you have created as an entity over the last 100+ years.
Thanks, Liz. I can't promise that I won't get too nerdy. It's just in me to share some nerdiness. AEIC's played a pivotal role in the power industry, really responsible for developing industry standards, focusing on safety, reliability, and effective power delivery, also managing affordability. So the AEIC Cable Engineering Committee has got representatives from the AEIC companies. So it's all member companies, and they all have a deep expertise in underground cable systems. So that includes design, layout, construction, testing, familiarity with material specifications. And then the committee is structured with both a distribution and transmission. So, transmission focused on high voltage cables, going across long distances, while distribution's more emphasis on medium voltage that, delivers electricity from substations to our consumers. So then the members of the committee are organized into task groups that focus on different aspects of the cable engineering. And that's where we develop specification guides and best practices for both transmission and distribution. And yeah, we update our specs on a cycle, we add new ones, and just at a high level, that's basically the structure of the cable engineering committee.
and something special about cable engineering, it's very subject matter expertise driven. A lot of the committee structure is led by, executive level leadership, chief operating officers, senior VPs that oversee the particular disciplines that are much larger, where cable engineering is, as I mentioned before, a very niche phenomena. But I think we, as an industry, forget how complex and challenging all of the devices that we've created and connected over the last 100+ years have a purpose. And as you were running the group on your side, you have a set of standards that have to be reviewed, vetted, and addressed as technology evolves, but also as the technology becomes older and utilized, and et cetera, et cetera. So there's this huge body of work that is required just to maintain one asset, let alone all of the assets within the systems that we count on. So you kind of covered that broad base. And so just from, I think, the purpose of the Grid Mod Pod is really sharing, our experiences and really kind of where we saw the greatest learning as well as the lessons learned so that we can share it with each other. So a key differentiation, I think, of these discussions is really looking at, and you guys got into the testing and development of the best practices, guidelines, et cetera, but really then sharing lessons learned and perspective of what worked, what didn't work. And you don't find that everywhere because, one, there's only like a subset of humans that are experts on cable. And so getting that voice together is so powerful.
No, I was saying it really is powerful. We've just leveraged our network so well. We're all really close because, we meet twice a year in person, except for during COVID, and maybe we can touch on that later. But you really develop such a strong relationship with the members because we're a small group. And it's funny, we were at a conference once, and one of the members, there was an outage. One of their cables had experienced a failure, and he was trying to solve it while we were in, I don't know, Florida or wherever. And he found out that the cable that they had in stock that was planned for their replacement was actually defective when they came to do the repair. So, with cable, you just can't, go to Home Depot and pick some cable up. It's got some long lead time and quite a bit of time to get this cable in stock. So this individual reached out to the AEIC. I mean, we were all there. He reached out. It's like, hey, does anyone have this cable in stock that we could borrow? And when our order comes in, we'll pay you back. And they were able to secure the cable. And it's just so amazing to have that network. And, anytime you need a question or want to bounce an idea off of someone, it's just such a great network to have. So, yeah. And it's group, very niche and very tight knit, I would say, too.
So I heard you mention, the events pre-COVID and after were in person, but what were you guys doing during COVID? Because I think that that time period has really been an impact on a lot of our committee engagement. So what did you guys do?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked, Liz. So I became chair in 2020. So right when the pandemic happened, I actually remember planning, talking to hotels and starting to book rooms and everything. And then we got the no travel and all the things that came with COVID. So one of the things that we did, and I think the DER committee was just a few of the committees really went online. We were able to adapt real quickly. Yeah, so usually AEIC falls right after ICC. So ICC is the part of IEEE PES. It's the Insulated Conductors Committee. So usually that happens for the beginning of the week, and then AEIC happens after. Unfortunately, ICC wasn't able to go virtual. So we went virtual with the AEIC committee. So we had virtual meetings, breakout sessions for all the working groups for distribution and transmission. And then we were also able to work with UPSTAC, the Utility Power Supply Technical Advisory Committee. So it was really great that they were able to hop online as well. And, during this time, we really wanted to share one of our specifications, CS8. It is our most referenced specification for distribution cables, and we had made some significant updates to it. So We usually get the word out at the ICC meeting. We usually have a slot where we do our update during the power systems breakout session, but we didn't have that this year. And we really wanted to get the word out about this new guide. So we did our first webinar, which was great. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it took a from us.
It was all new.
It was all new. And then you got to think too, it's like coordinating with all different utilities and finding a platform and all the things that came with that. So we created the webinar, which was great. We had such great attendance. And we also had other industry groups do webinars too, to just get the word out about this CS8, this new specification. In addition to that, we also were featured in Power Magazine, and we shared CS8, the updates that we made for that. And also, we also had a new standard about vault design. So we shared that as well in this article with Power Magazine. That was really cool because we hadn't typically done that type of work. And what was really helpful was the AEIC leadership. They really helped us with, getting the context with Power Mag, and then also helping us with the webinar. So the committee really felt supported, and we were really able to get the word out.
Awesome. I have to ask, what's that thing behind you, that little gavel? Are you a judge?
Oh, yeah, this thing. So I don't know if you can see a closer look here, but as part of chair of the committee, I did get this plaque from 2020, 2022. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a judge, but definitely
Call the meetings to order.
Call the meetings to order. It was such a nice token that the committee got for me, and also to, I don't have it here in my office, but a really nice award certificate as well, which was presented at the annual meeting. So it was a great experience and such a transformative one.
Fun fact, in the archives of AEIC, there's every annual meeting minutes since 1885. And there's some original charcoals of Thomas Edison and oil paintings, but there's some of his original gavels. Something like that.
Oh, really?
It must be something of tradition to give the chair a gavel. So there you go.
I did not know
Thomas
that.
Edison tradition.
I didn't know that. Now it's even more meaningful to me.
Yeah, look at
Thank
that.
you.
I think, importance about, when we say small, like thinking about how many people are here on Earth, how many people actually work within a utility, and then how many people within the utility have the expertise of the particular asset. And so I actually just asked this question on another interview that I had, and I'm going to share it here because I think you and I resonate on this the most, is, they asked, like, what is the most significant missing resource needed to create this accessible pathway to a new energy future, right? I mean, the new energy future is the reality that we have a very aged infrastructure.
Yes.
All parts of it, not just one. It has become utilized, and it is also serving the lifeline of society. And so what's that missing resource, right? Like, and I think it boils down to the people and having comprehensive, accessible education and training in regards to the expertise and the people that are needed to really drive the maintenance of the existing grid while it transforms. And so, as you say, it's a small group, but it's small relative to the much bigger picture. But the group itself is actually fairly large, and we're having that expertise all in one room.
Absolutely.
So how do you see, that the committee and your growth in regards to, developing the talent pipeline and creating that mentorship that, really makes it available not only to the one individual company, but like creates that training for all, really, right?
No, I'm really glad that you brought that up. I will say when I started with AEIC, I was really early in my career. So for me, I just really wanted to highlight some of the professional development. So really a unique opportunity for engineers and cable subject matter experts to develop leadership skills and their technical skills and collaborating with industry leaders. So that was really, really important. It really helps build your confidence, especially early on in your career, because you have this shared set that you can just bounce off. Hey, what are you doing, over at this utility or that utility? So I think that was really critical for me, is having that network. especially, people retire and then you lose all this tribal knowledge. So you can gain that by joining like AEIC and kind of learn about some of the issues that was happening. So that was really critical for me as I, showing like the organization's really unique value, I would say, of having that easy access to industry cable subject matter experts all across the industry. The other thing too is, although it's only cable members, utility members, we did have a portion of our meeting where we collaborated with manufacturers. So Upstack, which is the Utility Power Supply Technical Advisory Committee.
Love our acronyms.
We love our acronyms. Yeah. So we would work with them, especially when we're developing cable specifications. And so that was a really unique experience to have them, just for part of the meeting, working with them on technical issues, reviewing test data, results, etc. And that was also really great to have access to the vendors as well. And then, I talked about, some of the ways that we're like networking and collaboration, just, bouncing ideas off each other, shooting an email, like, and just getting answers instantly. And then, the industry influence. So our standards are referenced worldwide. So we get like questions from like people in China that want to understand, hey, what does this mean in your specification? Just like a clarification. And it's really cool to see that we have a global presence and that our specifications have such a large impact. And yeah, it's really rewarding, pushing the boundaries, starting new specifications. I know we're looking at ways to help with climate change and how that impacts the cable world. I think it's a great space for cable engineers at all levels really to learn, contribute, and coach and, gain experience at all levels. You never stop learning.
Right. And I guess, just kind of my shared perspective of being a part of the other subcommittee. Well, I was a subcommittee or to a committee, but that's a whole other different story. But it was like-minded folk talking about a certain set of operational needs to enable a certain technology to go forward. And I think, to all of those listeners that you're still hanging on, this isn't just about the cable engineering. I think your experience and what you've shared with me and I've shared back with you is, the environment for which the in-person sessions and then somewhat during COVID virtual really was an inclusive environment where all voices were heard and respected. And it's something that you really don't realize is what the whole of it is until you're kind of in it for a period of time and you feel comfortable, even if you're that mid-level, individual contributor or, lower ranked. There's really no position titles. It's really everyone's very passionate about the topics that we decide to discuss. And even if you're not in a state of maturity or you even have a program such, hearing about the methods and the development of certain processes and or assets or standards, for instance, is incredibly valuable. And I think also the space, because it's a very, diverse from many utilities undergoing, various regulatory drivers, various compliance needs. And then every grid is a little bit different, but the fundamentals of how it works is the same. And so because you create that space where your actual objective is to teach each other and learn from each other, it creates this really open space to share, which I think is very different. And maybe you can reflect on that of other industry organizations where you have a directive, you have an objective, there's a tight deliverable, and and there's like an agenda, if that makes sense.
Right.
That's to move something forward, and there could be many players that will be at an advantage, and then you're kind of in that space. But this is like where you can bring vendors in, you have these thorough conversations, you learn from each other, you take that and you go.
Yeah.
Would you feel that your experience with cable engineering was similar?
In a lot of aspects, yes. We did really take a deep dive into our specification and guides and made sure that we were reviewing them and updating them. And you think things don't change, but slowly they do, right? So we're constantly updating those specifications. But to your point, I mean, my favorite part was really the roundtable, at the end of the meetings, talking about the different things that we're observing in the industry and how we can all collaborate and, work through them. So yeah, absolutely. The cable engineering committee was such a great experience for me, especially as I served as chair for 2 years.
So just since we've said, I think, the word collaboration quite a bit, how do you, in your role, you've now in a new position leading, a new group, new ideas, but, from your learnings and perspective, how do you foster, really effective partnerships and creating the various networks needed to kind of do the job? So not just AIC, but just in general, what does collaboration look like to you?
You know what? To be honest, I think, you can have all the strategy and, put together all these PowerPoints, all the strategy, but you can't really do it without the people. And I think that's something that really just doesn't happen overnight. You really have to foster those relationships and have a good communication and partnership. So I think, some of the key things that I've done personally is, setting up one-on-ones, checking in, especially with my peers, even if there's nothing that I need, just, you know, sending a funny picture or, asking them how their weekend was or just joking around about whatever's going on. So I think it's not just reaching out to people when you need something from them, but just keeping that door open. And also too, doing a lot of skip levels. I think that's been really helpful for me. So,
Define a skip level. I don't know if everyone knows what that is.
oh yeah, just not your direct reports. So like your reports, or someone even outside of your organization that you work closely with, and just walking the floor. So I usually have a big bowl of chocolate that I walk around and just talk to people and just kind of hear what's happening, work related, not work related. Those have been really helpful for me. Making time, like we have a group chat that we just joke around in, and it doesn't always have to be serious. I think really when you think about it, we spend so much time at work, so having those type of lets where you can just have friends really is like friendships at work has really been helpful.
Right. And I, just to kind of tie it to the grid mod pod, right? The grid modernization term that us as the industry in 2024 have been using is really an evolution of the language that we chose from the development of the smart grid. And so I think it's really important to realize that we are up against time for some phenomena, especially with the age infrastructure and the new technology and the capabilities are unfolding at a rate that really our legislative obligations, our regulatory mandates, and really our financial models kind of limit our ability to expedite. But at the root of it, and to make any of that kind of change, is really what you just stated, is like creating space and awareness, the correct language, that having the people that you can bring into a quorum, have fruitful synergistic partnership type discussions is really how we're going to modernize the grid. In essence, with all this advanced technology and artificial intelligence and data analytics, if you don't have those that can drive the invaluable insight from all these technologies to drive the impact, to create the influence, we may all just be kind of spiraling in our own orbitals. So it's really important to create beautiful networks of relationships with humans to really expedite and move some of this stuff along. So I think that we don't take enough time to realize that. And so you sharing, just the soft skills is incredibly valuable to creating the teams that are going to drive this creative thought and innovation that we need to champion not only just the cable, but every piece of asset on the grid that needs to be looked at, observed, and then redesigned for this new transformation that's coming.
Yeah,
I know I said a lot there, but so
No,
I'm going to
no,
throw it back at
I'm
you.
I'm just totally agreeing with you. Kind of reminded me of one of the things I did with my team is just, every couple of weeks having a professional development topic that, every one of us would bring up, either a YouTube video or, Harvard Business Review or an article or a podcast. And, we'd either read it before or if the video was short, would watch it together and just, talk about it, having like a unified leadership on the same, sending the same message is so impactful. So, we implemented a lot of things that we had read about and learned about and just kind of, really helped drive engagement on my team. I couldn't have done it without the support of my leadership team. So I think to your point, creating an environment of learning, like, I'm learning too, with them and really moving things forward, supporting some of the things that we want to implement to increase engagement and also the environment for people to learn and grow is what we need to face the challenges with grid modernization that's coming our way.
Exactly. So, kind of bringing us full circle, the impact of being a part of a committee that's specific in expertise really helps one develop personally, create the knowledge base to share with their internal teams to drive forward, and then also creating that network as there's continuous improvement and development, you have that group to lean on, be it additional AIC utility members or just your internal folk with that growth. I love it. And, for those that are seeking of how to be engaged, really just jump in, start asking questions, make friends. I think those that are championing the change that's existing are more than willing to have companions in this journey. I know you and I both agree on that in our past conversations.
Yeah.
So with that, like what's one, tip of wisdom that you've kind of want to share? I know we've shared a bunch, but kind of like wrapping it up, what would you say to any of those listeners that are either in college or, wanting to be a part of really supporting and driving this transformation we're going through?
For those that are in college, I would say join an organization. I was part of IEEE and Society of Women Engineers, and that was so helpful. You learn leadership skills and you learn technical skills. So I would say for those in college, when you have a student group day, all those booths out, walk by and sign up. And one thing is you make a lot of friendships. I will say from college, I won't say what year, but I've had relationships still from college through the Society of Women Engineers that I talk to almost every day. So I would say that, but I'm going to have to share more than one, Liz.
Yeah, go for it.
I would say too, don't eliminate yourself. One of the things that people will come in and talk to me about is like, I want to apply to this position, but I'm worried. Don't eliminate yourself. I think that's kind of one of the big things that I've learned. People see potential in you, believe it, and believe in yourself.
I just have to share a fun story. When job fairs in college, I was deathly afraid of approaching those recruiters with my resume.
Yes.
And now having to do those career fairs, I was dying for students to approach me. So, get prepared, get ready. It may be awkward, but it's an invaluable lesson to interact with and have that small talk and talk about, your passions with strangers. So I love your advice of, get involved and be engaged because ultimately we're there for a purpose. So creating that connection and driving the thought leadership is really what we want to do. So make sure you're doing it and don't eliminate yourself.
Yeah.
Well,
I did the same thing actually. I was so nervous. Yeah. And then I developed a strategy when I was in college. I went to the booths that I didn't really want to work at those companies just to kind of like warm up, with the questions. And then for the companies I was really interested in, I once I got comfortable with all the questions that recruiters would ask, then I would go to those ones, and it worked. I landed a nice internship and a good job right out of school. So
love it.
that's another one. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I look forward to our continued collaboration as we work in this industry and the champions of change and being a part of these great organizations and these committees. And until then, see you next time.
Thank you, Liz, for inviting me, and look forward to more discussions.
That's a wrap for this week's episode of the GridMod Pod. Thanks for tuning in. We hope today's conversation got you thinking about new and creative ways to improve our power grid. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be the first to hear new episodes. This podcast is brought to you by AEIC, the place where operations leaders come together to share knowledge and provide guidance to the electric utility industry. We'll be back with a new episode soon. Until then, keep powering on.